We surveyed the video creators audience, and the main challenge that came back from everyone, regardless of channel size or experience level on YouTube, is this issue of time. You just want more time. You need more time to get everything done to achieve the goals you want on YouTube. We're going to tell you that we don't think that's absolutely true and give you a different perspective on how to grow without worrying so much about the time and all the overwhelm.
Hey, welcome to the Video Creators Podcast presented by vidIQ. You know how you put a lot of time and energy into your YouTube channel for not nearly enough growth? Yep, we get it. We are here today to help you change that.
Hello, creators. How are you? It's great to see you again for another Video Creators Podcast episode like we do here every week to help you grow your channel, grow your business, reach more people, and change their lives with the message that you're spreading, and especially with a very important topic of overwhelm and burnout and time management and how do you get all the things done. I'm looking forward to this conversation here today. I'm joined, as usual, with two amazing YouTube strategists here on the Video Creators team. We've got Ingrid. Yeah, you were expecting that word amazing, huh?
Amazing.
Ooh,
I feel
amazing.
So special.
I feel like a magician, like the amazing Sam and Ingrid.
I could have used the word beloved. That would have been weird.
Yeah, maybe a little weirder.
Ingrid, North Carolina, and Sam in Florida. How are you guys doing today?
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Excited to dig into this topic. This is going to be fun.
Do you need more time, Ingrid?
I always need more time.
You should talk with your manager about that.
I feel like I'm running out of time. Just turned 30 last week, so I'm officially
my
an old man running out of time.
You over that hill?
Yeah, okay.
Every week, we like to introduce you to a creator who's doing something that we can learn from on YouTube. And this week's Creator Spotlight is who? Sam? Robert? Is that right?
Yeah, Robert McFarlane. He's got a really cool channel called the Director's Toolbox. He does a lot of film types of videos and things like that. So he just finished going through Video Labs, and he's been around for a little while. I believe he did a consultation and 30 days as well. In the past, but very relevant to what we're talking about today. You know, he shares a little bit of kind of his struggles with, setting goals for himself and just failing to hit those goals, and even just feeling like he's running out of time. So really relevant to what we're talking about today. But here is Blake talking with Robert about his story.
One of the first roadblocks as a creator really was to decide, will there be a time in which I will have to call it if I don't make enough subscribers, if I don't make enough views, if I don't have enough of a signifier coming back from YouTube, in the same way that YouTube's looking for signifiers from the audience to say, hey, this is a good video. How is YouTube also telling me that, hey, you're doing a good job and you should continue?
Right.
Honestly, my wife was the one who would always kind of go, okay, what's our subscriber goal this month? And not once did I ever make my subscriber goal. Not once did I ever make my viewership goal. Not once have I ever made my income goal. I think I generally make about £3. Obviously, things are changing, which is great. But for a long time, it was really tough. Getting my first negative comment was a moment, because it wasn't just a negative comment, it was a negative epistle. And it was,
it's brutal.
It was unbelievable. And it made me go, oh, I've read about this. I've heard about this. This happens to people. Okay. How do I deal with this? And it was when I had an opinion brought out both sides of people who agreed or disagreed, and it was the polarizing nature of creating content was really incredible. But how I overcame the goals was really that I used it as fuel. Every time I missed my goal, it was okay, I need to push, I need to not be comfortable, I need to keep growing. And how do I keep doing that? Again, I had the support network that would keep telling me, no, go back into the analytics, go look at the numbers, and don't be afraid of the fact that you're quote unquote failing in your own mind, but use that to grow and kind of strive to be a better YouTuber every day. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I honestly, I mean, that's one thing I think a lot of creators struggle with. For sure. I mean, when I got my first negative comment too, I mean, it hits hard when you're like, I just poured my soul out, and then you're just like talking smack about me. I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, should I stop? But I mean, having that encouraging circle around you too is what kind of helps keep things going. Because I mean, YouTube can be a lonely place for sure, and doing this by yourself, there's a lot that goes into it. So when you pour it out and it's like, this isn't going the way that I want, it's like having those people around you, like your wife, like that's priceless to kind of keep you going, because it's a long journey, but it's worth it in the end. I feel like in a lot of ways for sure. Right. And it grows you as a person. But
oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. I've got so many other roadblocks I could give if you would like some more.
Yeah. Give me another roadblock for sure. What's something else you kind of jumped into that you're like, how do I navigate this?
When life gets busy, how do you stay consistent? Because once the pandemic lifted, work started coming back, and I had to make a choice. I would either take really big jobs, which would mean I'd have big gaps in content, or I'd take a slightly smaller job, but be able to stay consistent. And I chose the smaller job. I was still able to pay my bills. I was still able to keep a roof over my head, but it didn't make us as financially stable, because I saw I made a goal for myself that was kind of my blue sky goal. I kind of called it. It's like the perfect scenario. What was that going to be? YouTube was going to be the foundation of my career as a director. It was no longer about the numbers. It was no longer about how much money I'm making from it. It was about, how do I now use this platform for more than just, I think the term I heard the other day, which was brilliant, vanity metrics. Because for me, YouTube became my own learning process about becoming a better director. So I chose to go a harder route financially to give myself the time I needed to become a better YouTuber.
Right.
I know that's impossible for some people, but it was a moment where I could either go down this road and provide a service for someone else's stories, or choose to tell my own stories, which meant slightly harder life for a period of time. And it's not possible for some, I understand that. But I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I could make that decision.
Wow. That's really good. Yeah, give me one more. What's another roadblock for sure? This is great stuff, man. I love hearing, you got so much knowledge you're trying to share with us right now. It's awesome.
Oh gosh. Okay. Right. More roadblocks. Probably the biggest roadblock of all has been, this is tricky, extrapolating myself, taking myself away from what I would normally do in a film, right? All the prep, the script writing, the perfection, the lighting, all of the processes that I've spent 20 years learning, and kicking them to the curb and finding out that actually YouTube has a whole different world of priorities, the key of which is authenticity. And the further I was moving away from what I originally learned as a filmmaker to create YouTube content, the more I realized that ultimately the basic principles of YouTube that make you successful aren't the minutiae details, like the technicalities, the color, the lighting, the camera, the lenses. They're the things that actually make the best films the best films. I mean, you look at Alfred Hitchcock movies. They were shot on film cameras with the clunkiest tripod. The camera doesn't move. They've got the worst lighting. But they've got a story, and he tells it in a way that is so compelling. And that is exactly what YouTube is. It was realizing that YouTube is a storytelling machine primarily. And until I learned that, and really I would say the Video Creators course was my big aha moment that, oh my God, YouTube is about storytelling. How could I not see this? I spent 2 years making videos and I'm a storyteller. Without Video Creators, and I've told this to my wife as well, I don't think I would have ever made the connection, and therefore probably the largest pivot I've ever made in my content.
Being in Video Labs, what are some key takeaways? I know you mentioned storytelling, but what are some key takeaways that you're going to be implementing now moving forward as well?
Oh God. Okay. So the list is long and thorough, but I would say from even from just doing week 1 again, which was the 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
I'd done the 30 days course a year before.
Okay.
Or a little bit more than a year before. And I thought, oh, wow, I know they tell me to do it again. I'll just do it. And as soon as I did like the first video, I was like, oh my God, I know I need to really do this again. Ended up taking me 3 weeks to redo. And I rebranded the whole channel. I started to look at all of my content in a new light. And I was like, oh, this has just been so incredibly useful just to kind of reevaluate where I was as a YouTuber. Obviously, for me right now, the huge pivot came when during the Video Labs week 5 and week 6, introducing the hero's journey and the hero's circular story. Huge, getting that Excel spreadsheet to just, oh my God, I don't need to write these scrappy scripts anymore. You've got almost a format that you can tailor make to your own content style. Was huge. I was able to write what would normally take me 3 days to write a script. I was able to write it in half a day.
Wow.
And I was like, I can do this. It made it so much more attainable to create content that told a story that was effective, that the audience would feel connected to. But I didn't have to take weeks agonizing over every detail and word. Another huge one was I got really reliant on using a teleprompter. And so I came out, whenever I read from teleprompter, I realized I was creating a YouTube persona, which also wasn't authentic. So another huge learning curve for me was how to strip away this facade that I had created for YouTube to kind of, I don't know if it was protection or if it was, I had convinced myself that this uber energized, over gesticulating person, even more than I am now, was the right person for YouTube. And in reality, it wasn't me. So becoming myself again was a huge learning curve that came from the course as well. So many more lessons and more and more and more on top of that. And I'm still going through the course and letting things settle. So
let's say there's somebody who's trying to grow the channel for the first time, or like you, like what's a piece of advice you give them? Audience.
Find out who you are talking to. And even if it is you, write you down. Who's the version of you? Because like I realized that, so my audience avatar, he's called Director Derek, just because alliteration is easier to remember. Yeah. But Director Derek is basically me when I was 20. And so I described myself and my problems because I knew that most intimately. It was the most comfortable. And I find probably the most difficult to speak to authentically, because you're kind of speaking to yourself, and that's hard in itself, because you also then have to recognize your own weakness. The sooner you develop an audience, the sooner then you can iterate on that audience and get even deeper and deeper and deeper into it with each video that you create, is so key. And then keep it simple. The KISS method. Yeah. The full version of that is keep it simple, stupid. And every time you overthink something, every time you overcomplicate something, you will see it in your audience retention. Wherever it's too complicated and you've gone even the slightest bit off topic,
Yeah, we always say, like, if you feel it in your gut that this isn't, like, is this right or not, you're probably going to see it in your retention graphs. That's kind of what happens a lot of the times, for sure. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate you. And all the best.
No problem. Thank you so much.
I love what Robert was sharing. I mean, all of that was gold, but I think, everything from learning just storytelling, that YouTube is really all about storytelling, but also what he was saying about kind of just zooming out and looking at the channel from a bird's eye view and just kind of asking that question of, what is the next right step for me to take here? How do I use my time the most effectively to move the channel forward. So if this sounds like you, if you find yourself in a similar place with your channel and you'd like to talk with somebody just to learn what those next steps might be, we'd love to jump into a free 15-minute discovery call with you to just hear a little bit of your story, a little bit of what you're up to with the channel, and we can talk through some of the services that we provide and how we can come alongside you and help you with your goals. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in doing, go ahead and visit videocreators.com/discovery call, and we will talk with you there.
Before we jump into this conversation about time, I want to thank both of you for giving me more time over the past several episodes. I know I've been on a hosting hiatus because there's a lot of things going on, and sometimes you just got to make calls and judgments on like, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm not going to do. And missing the podcast for a few episodes is not something I enjoy doing, but was necessary to finish up some other projects. So thank you guys for filling in. I hope the audience wasn't too upset or missed me too much, but I'm sure the other episodes went great.
I feel like we did you some justice there. We at least threw to you. We missed you.
Yeah.
We're glad you're back.
Thank you for pretending to miss me. I appreciate that. Oh, but yeah, time. Like that's something I deal with every day, as I'm sure you two as well, especially since Video Creators has been acquired by vidIQ. When I was at Video Creators, I was just managing Video Creators, which now is Ingrid's job. But now I'm managing Ingrid over Video Creators and two other teams inside of vidIQ and building another one kind of from scratch. So there's a lot, right? Going on. I think where I feel the most overwhelmed is trying to figure out how to prioritize everything going on with all the teams, plus personal life, plus my own, and personal life, I mean like family and spending time with them, and we homeschool our kids. But then there's also like, I just need me time as well. What does it look like for you two? Because as creators, but also as YouTube strategists and stuff, you've got jobs, you got work, just like everyone else is listening. Where does that tension point lie for both of you, primarily in when you feel overwhelmed and out of time?
Yeah, for me, recently, very much like you, is like I'm trying to figure out how to build in some personal time, right, around work, because like I get so focused on one thing, and then all of a sudden, before I know it, there's no time left to do all the other stuff. So it's like trying to figure out again how to restructure my day and paying attention to what to say no to. And then if I'm saying yes too many times, I'm saying no to everything else.
The ironic part is I'm the one telling Ingrid to say no.
Constantly.
Like, stop that, Ingrid. You don't need to do that. You don't have time for that. That can wait. Yeah. It's tough though to know. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, no, this is such a good question. For me, I feel like boundaries are so important, and it's something that I actually value a lot. I take my boundaries really seriously, and that comes into work, but it comes into my personal life as well. I think when it comes to, especially on the hours that I'm not working, having boundaries around things that I'm trying to pursue outside of work have been really helpful for me. You know, I think it's easy to get into seasons where maybe you're working your job, and then you're trying to either build something or like move towards something in your off hours, and then you find yourself working all the time. And so I find myself there too at some points, and it's really helpful for me to put some boundaries there. But also putting boundaries around my rest time is helpful as well. So if I'm, maybe I bought like a new video game or something like that, and that's kind of how I recharge my batteries, or, really anything like that. Sometimes I can find myself like, binging on a weekend, like past the point where it's not restful anymore. And now I'm just kind of wasting my time. So it's been helpful for me there to set some boundaries when it comes to rest, to, I have my time where I'm going to recharge my batteries, and then past whatever this point is, this isn't really helping me anymore. So yeah, I think in general, that's helped me a lot.
I've experienced some very real consequences of not having good boundaries, of not managing time well. I told the story before, so I won't go into it in detail here, but a few years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, just physically, just sharpest pain I've ever felt in my stomach. And doctors and therapists both said, Tim, you're stressed. You need to back up. And at that time, I was like, I'm not stressed. I don't feel stress, but my body felt the stress. I was so out of tune with the amount of stress I was feeling that I didn't even, like, my body collapsed underneath the pressure. And I was still like, what? I'm not stressed, you know? But that just shows you how emotionally out of touch I was with myself. And several years of therapy later, I'm in much better touch with that side too. But relationships struggle and suffer. My own personal identity and where I find my value in you know, and what feels significant to me was based on what other people were saying and thinking, more so than other things. So there's a lot of real consequences to this that I don't think we think through until we get to, like, maybe the end of our lives, or we have a physical, like a medical emergency or something, and it forces us to slow down. Has that ever been the case for either of you? Not the medical emergency, hopefully, but
yes, it has. But I feel like part of the struggle, and I think that one of the things that I see creators struggle with a lot too, and it's just very relatable just to life in general and different seasons that you're in, is we figure it out, and then we hit maybe a new thing, and we're going towards something else. It's almost like we've forgotten everything that we've learned before, right? So then you're going through the same struggle. I don't know about the two of you, but I feel like that's the case with me sometimes.
Have either one of you experienced some real consequences to this? And what do those look like in your life?
Yeah, there's not one in particular that comes to mind for me. I think what sometimes happens to me in, let's say I'm in kind of like a grind, like a hustle mentality. Like, I have nothing against hustling and, like, you know, pushing towards a goal or something, maybe in the off hours that you're not working, you know, like, it'd totally be great. But I think for me, the downfall has sometimes come from not setting a boundary on, like, maybe a tangible date, like a end date for something like that. Like, I'm going to hustle for the next 3 months. And at the end of that 3 months, I'll evaluate and see, like, how are we doing? Like, do I need to press pause and take a water break and then you get back to it in the next month? How am I doing? Just like check-ins like that. You know, I think the downfalls for me have been when I don't do that. And then maybe you find yourself 6 months down the road, just totally burnt out or really exhausted. And there hasn't really been like a stop point or like a just a check-in point. Cause I think, especially when it comes to YouTube and creating, it's totally uncapped. I think you can endlessly put as many hours as you want in for forever. You know, you could just keep going and going and going unless someone stops you or if you stop yourself. So I found myself in those places at some points, and it's really helped to have that, like, check-in point. Like, I will do this until here, and then I'll kind of reevaluate my goals.
Is that a date on the calendar, or is that like accountability with your wife, or what does that look like?
Yeah, usually it's accountability with her. You know, we've talked in past episodes about OKRs. We do this as a team. You know, for the quarter, we'll talk through what are we working on for this quarter, and you know, my wife and I are total nerds, and we do OKRs together as a family. You know, non-work related, as far as, you know, what are we working towards? Because we really believe that even as like a married couple in our lives, it's important to have some sort of a goal. What are we trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to do? So yeah, we will set those as well. Just every quarter, every 3 months, we'll have some sort of a date for as far as what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's hustling or like my current one for this period is really just like rest for me, because I had been hustling for a while. So it's my goal for this month is to be taking care of myself and not pushing too hard. And by the end of the 3 months, we're going to evaluate it and see, okay, do I feel more rested? Yes or no? And then we'll kind of decide where we want to go from there. So yeah, for ours, it's actually a tangible date on the calendar.
Okay. Yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar, OKR stands for objectives and key results. So you are setting an objective for yourself and then measuring it with these are the things that need to be true in order to reach this objective, these key results. So yeah, that's good. Well, in my experience, I learned a lot over the past several years about this. And I feel like I'm in a place now, not to like brag or anything, but I had the gift of a physical breakdown, so to speak. And I spent almost $9,000 on therapy in 2021, and thankfully went down to like 5,000 in 2022. So making progress. Yeah. And I've learned a lot through all this about time management. And I think I want to talk about it here together from a different perspective. I think it's easy to get into the tactics of like how to do more in less time type of conversations. And I think there's merit to that conversation, but I think there's a higher level conversation that people don't have as often. And I think is probably more important, which is like, instead of figuring out ways to hack life and do more in less time, and what would it look like to do less in more time? But the less, you're doing less, but it's accomplishing more. And if we start with that starting point, like, first of all, doing less in more time means that we are working less, maybe accomplishing more. But the other part of that means that because we have more time, we are having periods where we are intentionally unproductive, unfruitful, and allowing ourselves to experience the fruit of everything we've worked on, the results of what is generated. And not always assuming, this is a deeply held belief that I think is hard for a lot of people to change, is not just believing that the goal is to acquire more and make more. I know for me, one of the things that was driving me was I felt like I was always waiting for the hammer to drop. And I have a few experiences in my life of where that came from. So it's not unfounded. It is certainly founded on real life experiences where you think everything's going great, and then it's a hard left turn and everything's going terribly now, and you lose the job, you lose the income, or the channel gets demonetized or whatever. Things outside your control happen, and that happens a time or two, and you start getting used to living your life in a way where, like, I'm always waiting for the hammer to drop. And if you live your life in a way you're always waiting for the hammer to drop, then you end up pushing and driving and doing everything you can to ensure that doesn't happen, that it can't happen, and that you are still safe and secure even if it does happen, and trying to prevent it from ever happening again. And for me, that was one of the things that drove me to an unhealthy place.
I guess the times I find myself in similar places, I feel like two things usually start to happen. I think one thing is I start to hit the accelerator, and I'm almost like trying to do things faster and faster and faster, or like multitasking more and more things. And I don't know if it's from a root of anxiety or stress or something like that, but I think the natural result is that I'm just hitting the gas, and it's not productive. I'm just trying to do things faster and faster and faster. And I think the other thing that happens is it's almost like this tunnel vision becomes, closer and closer and closer. And now all of a sudden I'm like, I can't zoom out and see the big picture of where I'm trying to go or what I'm trying to accomplish. And you almost become more short-sighted and not seeing the whole picture. I think that can burn me out too. So yeah. I think sometimes taking a moment to, and you guys have heard me talk about this almost every week in our team meetings, as far as when I find myself getting to that place, learning to hit the brakes and just take a moment to like zoom back out. Like, what's the whole picture? What does the whole map look like? What are my long-term goals? I think taking moments to do that helped me a lot too, to know for my next, what's my next 3 steps that I need to take are probably going to be founded a lot more, a lot better after doing that versus when I'm in this place of like, almost rooted from stress.
I should have looked up this research before we recorded this. I didn't think of it until just now. Yesterday, I was listening to a podcast and about rest and taking breaks and things. And in there, they cited some research that was done, and I'm totally going to butcher it. But the idea was basically they took people and gave how much did you accomplish in 40 hours a week? And then they took those people and also said, okay, now you have to accomplish this amount in 30 hours instead. And what they found was that people tended to be able to accomplish the same amount of results with 10 hours less a week when forced to do so, which meant that they freed up. They had a whole day and a half of extra time to themselves, going back to that theme of doing less in more time, right? But then the surprising results is they took a group of people also and said, you have to do what you normally do in 40 hours, but you have to do it now in 25 hours. And those people actually overperformed what they would normally do in 40 hours a week when forced to accomplish things in 25 hours, right? So they're actually, and you can probably Google it and find this research. If I was more prepared, I'd have it for you. But the idea is like thinking that if I had more time, I would accomplish more, I don't think is actually true, because these people accomplish, the data suggests that you accomplish more if you have less time to accomplish it. Now, they didn't mention the quality of life and the stress levels. They mentioned it. I was just talking about pure productivity, here. But I think, and I might want to come back, I think that principle will make more sense as I kind of go through here, maybe some points here about how you think about time and managing it and how we use it. I think the number one place to start, and Ingrid, you wrote these notes, so give credit to where credit is due. But I absolutely agree that what Ingrid said is like, what's the long-term goal? And why did you start there, Ingrid, when it comes to time management and creating more time?
Well, you really need to have the big picture in order. And you have to almost reverse engineer your day to day. You need to understand what the bigger picture is and then figure out those steps that are going to help you drive forward in a long-term way, right? Because this is not about winning it overnight. It's just not life. Right? We're all in this for the long haul. So you need to understand what the long-term goal is. That's where it starts.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think rather than just assuming that everything on our plate needs to be consumed, what if instead we assumed that I don't have to consume all this, and I might even live a healthier life if I don't, right? And so the question I have been thinking about now, first of all, and I do a lot of personal business coaching with creators as well. And this is the process I follow with them is usually it starts with like they want to improve their funnel, or they're getting ready to hire a team, or they are looking to position themselves to be acquired as well, and want some coaching along those lines. And so they want to develop the business side, but I'm like, okay, first of all, we're like, rather than creating a business, rather than assuming that the goal of the business is just to make money and you end up sacrificing your life for the sake of the business, let's flip that. What kind of life do you want to live? And how do you grow a business that supports that? Right. And so we're putting life first, not business first. And we're defining, and it kind of gets into life coaching a little bit at that point, which is like, what do you want your life to look like? And then once we've kind of figured out what that looks like, then how do we shape and craft a business that supports that life so that you're not sacrificing your life for the sake of the business, but the business is here to make your life better and to improve your life life and to serve other people and your family and things as well. So I think the top level question, what's the long-term goal, is the right one. Maybe not just in terms of the business, but in terms of your life. Like, what do you want for your life? What do you want for your time? What do you want it to feel like, experience with? And I think when you ask most people that, they just default to like travel or buying expensive things. But when we poke it more and go a few layers deeper than the surface level, what they really want is just peace. What they really want is health and vibrant relationships, with family or community, things like that. So if relationships, let's say, is the primary goal, okay, well, how do we structure our lives in a way that relationships can be thriving and be the primary thing that we are experiencing as giving us life? And how do we structure a business that supports that, right? So you said here, Ingrid, that the most successful individuals and organizations focus on long-term rather than short-term. Can you share a little bit about that and the difference that you think the short-term versus the long-term goals make in the trajectory we live our lives and take our businesses?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're only focusing on short-term gains, then you're just focusing on the task at hand, right? Versus like, where are we actually headed? And what's the bigger overall thing that we're really, and you put it so great, Tim, in talking about life, because that, even if you're a business, right? What does the business want? Like I think of Apple, your favorite company.
Not my favorite company. I just like to pick on you because you're a PC person and we're Mac people. That's all.
I just might get a Mac just so we can end these conversations.
Then I would be bored.
I know. But what's their long-term goal? What's their bigger picture? A short-term gain. Yeah. Okay. This one phone is doing really well and we're king of the market right now in this one thing, but that doesn't really, that's good for now, but it's not good for the bigger picture, the longer vision. Is that really the good way of putting it? Longer vision, bigger vision?
Yeah. In the book, Good to Great, Jim Collins, when he looked at like, what's the difference between a good company and a great company, and he defines those specific ways. But one of the common traits among many others of what makes a company great versus just good is that great companies have what he calls a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And I think that applies to life too, like what's your BHAG for your life? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal for your life? Is it to get 1 million subscribers? No. I mean, it could be, but I bet if we poked at that a little bit more, there's probably a deeper thing that you actually want. Yeah. And you think the 1 million subscribers will satisfy that for you, but it likely won't. I worked with a creator years ago, probably like 6-7 years, maybe 8 years ago now. He's like, Tim, I just want 1 million subscribers. So, okay. So we get to 1 million subscribers, and he was happy for 15 minutes. And then he literally says, okay, what do we got to do to get to 2 million? Yeah. Okay. So we get to 2 million. And again, he had like a 15-minute celebratory live stream. And then he's like, okay, how do we get to 5 million? And I'm like, okay, it's just like the never ending pursuit of something that doesn't satisfy at the end of the day. So,
we see it in creators all the time right now. Look at creator that I greatly respect and love his content is Eric Decker, the channel Eric. Big goal of getting to 1 million in 1 year. And they couldn't believe that they actually did it. So that was very much it. What's next?
Yeah.
10 million.
I don't think there's anything wrong with those goals as long as it's rooted in a place that's like healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know him personally to know whether or not that's true. I've heard him talk. Sounds like he's coming from a good place, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Sam, before I've been, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like clarity is coming to mind for me of like, if you can find clarity with a long-term goal, that'll give you clarity for your short-term goals to get there. And it's like the thing that's coming to mind for me is like, if you were to try to do a puzzle and not have the box for the puzzle to see what the end goal, what it's supposed to look like. And if you're like trying to put the puzzle pieces together and you don't have a clear picture of what you're building towards, it's just frustrating. You probably waste a lot of time doing it. So I think in the same way, not having clarity around a long-term goal like that, probably you're kind of spinning your wheels, wasting a lot of time, if you don't have clarity in your day-to-day too. So I think when it comes to like the steps that are going to get you there to that long-term goal, that probably gives you a lot of clarity, and you probably feel way more like you're winning kind of on a day-to-day. If the things that I'm doing today and tomorrow and this week and next week are pushing me towards this long-term goal that I've set, you probably feel like you're accomplishing something, moving that direction too.
Sam, I'm working on a puzzle right now, and you stressed me out when you said that.
Do you have the box?
My hands actually got sweaty thinking that I had to create that puzzle without the box.
Oh, I was going to say, I hope you have the box.
I think, Sam, we should make it a new challenge for us in these episodes to see how many times we can trigger her. Just stress her out for no reason.
Worse than my brother.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when I think about that example, you can accomplish more in 25 hours if you had to than you can in 40. A couple things pop out to me. One is you have an extra 15 hours a week of thinking, of resting, of time to breathe, to process. And I'm guessing that when you do work, that work is more productive, because you've had the time to think and breathe and rest and let your creative juices re-energize and things like that. The other thing I think it does, number two, though, is so number one is like focus on the long-term goal primarily for life, but then also for your business so that your business helps you accomplish the life goal. But then number two, I think we have to start prioritizing what we spend our time on, what we focus on. When you don't have a long-term goal, all the tasks feel like they are mission critical. They all feel important and urgent, and so you end up just constantly feeling like you're putting out fires because you don't know the difference between a distraction and an opportunity. You don't know the difference between something that's going to move you forward and something that's like just a nice to have thing to do. And you don't really have the time to think about, I could do these 5 things this way, or I could do this one thing over here that accomplishes what those other 5 things would have done, right? You're kind of thinking way too linearly. Is that how you say that word?
Linearly.
Whatever. As opposed to getting your head up above the clouds a little bit, looking down and saying like, oh, there's a couple other paths I could take. Here's a shortcut. Let me just pull this one lever instead of working on these 5 knobs over here. And so prioritizing according to the mission, according to the goal, that long-term goal that BHAG even, that's what a lot of people don't do. I said this in my personal podcast, but I'll say it here because I think it fits. It's when we talk about time, I hear like, oh, I just got to make time for that, or I got to make time for this, or like, I ran out of time. And I heard someone say that, and I'm like, oh no, someone said, this is how I remember this. Someone said like, oh, Tim, thank you for making time for me. And my response kind of surprised me. My response was like, they were apologizing and thanking me and everything. Like, oh no, like you didn't take time for me. I chose to give it to you. And then I was like, that was a weird thing for me to say, but I thought it was true. Actually, I'm like, yeah, you don't get to make time. No one gets to make time. You're either letting other people take it from you, or you are choosing where to give your time. And the difference is one's passive, where you're just responding to incoming inquiries and requests. The other is active, where you are deciding where you're putting your time and where you're not putting your time, and you're making priorities of based on the mission, what's critical, what's not, and things like that. And I think if we did more of that, and I learned this the hard way many times with video creators, is like one of the ways we try to solve this problem is just to hire more people to do more work. And that might do more work, but every time I've hired someone and I had this thought in my mind, like, oh, if I just could free up my video editing, I would have 15 hours a week of my life back. So I hired a video editor. Did I get 15 hours of my life back? No.
Nope.
It got filled up almost immediately with other things. It's like, okay, I'll get an administrative assistant, or I'll get this person. And you hire all these. All that happens is like there's a never ending demand of tasks that demand our time. And so hiring, I don't think, is the solution. It can be, and in many cases, obviously, I mean, we're all working part of a team. But I think before we just jump to that, we should first consider like, how do I need to prioritize my time better and make choices about where I'm giving my time? And are things that are taking my time that feel urgent and important that really aren't? And that could eliminate 15 hours of my life, of my work life right there, and free up time for me to move forward on the mission. So I don't know. What does that look like for you two?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, you know, if you're going to hire somebody, you're doing it more for a purpose, kind of like for you. I've heard you say this over and over again. Instead of working in the business, free you up to work on the business.
That's right.
So shifting your kind of like mission of what you're working on.
Yeah.
At the time, no pun intended,
Yeah.
to a different way.
I would add to that too, like when it comes to hiring or building a team, like I think a part of it is the time, the time aspect of, if there's a bottleneck somewhere and then hiring someone to fill that spot, trying to free up some time there. But I think part of it too is like an energy suck too. Like if there's a particular part of the job, like I think of it as a creator, titles and thumbnail, like if you hate making thumbnails and it's not necessarily just the time.
I raised my hand to that one.
Yeah, I raised my hand too.
I hate that.
It's not necessarily the time that's a big problem, but if that just totally drains you because you hate doing it, I think even hiring for that, and then you kind of have this energy to put towards some of these priorities you've put in place. Or maybe you don't hate your life as much because you're not working on thumbnails. I think that's part of it too. Maybe offloading some of the things that you don't love. You can kind of use your time more positively doing things that you enjoy doing.
But I do like how Tim put it, though. He said choosing to give your time, and I'm going to remember that and use that for sure, because even in what you just said, Sam, choosing to put your energy into maybe something that's a little bit more life-giving, still going towards the big goal, but, filling your cup a little bit better with your work, on a day-to-day basis, which has ripple effects long-term.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we did get to a place where we could see more of those ripple effects that impact our life in a positive way by accomplishing the same amount, but in less time, then I hope that would give us the space to then prioritize self-care. And I know that's a weird thing. I thought it was pretty weird for the workaholics and the people who are living their life for their business and things. I totally get it. I would hear the word self-care and I'd be like, that's stupid. Like, why would you take care of yourself? And I think I've shared this story before. I don't think it was here. I think it was on my personal podcast there. I remember that. Did I tell you guys the story of the first time I ever tried to do self-care?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Okay. So my therapist is like, you got to do something. I'm like, that's dumb, but I'm paying lots of money. So I'm like, all right, let me, one of the things I knew is like my way of handling and processing these things is not working. So I should follow someone else's process or SOP, if you will, for life because mine's not working. So I was just doing it based on just trust. I thought it was dumb and wasn't going to work, But we've had that experience enough of video creators where clients are like, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that. That's not going to work. And I'm like, well, why'd you pay us all that money for? And just try it. Oh, it did work. See? So I had that attitude. And I'm like, I've seen this story play out. So I'm going to just follow the process. All it was for me, that's where I started, was to sit down at night after kids were in bed and drink a sugar-free Zevia soda. Did I tell you guys a story? I don't remember.
I know the story.
Okay. Yeah. And I was just sitting there and the house was quiet. And the thing that was just sit down and having a drink. And the thought that went through my head that made it difficult for me was like, this thing cost a whole $1. This Zevia soda. Like, I can't drink this. This is like a waste. This is a whole $1. I can afford $1, right? We're okay. but what it revealed is like, I didn't feel like I was worth $1. Like to spend $1 on myself was not, it was too much. So that was a whole other issue to work through. Yeah, but I wouldn't have realized that if I hadn't taken that advice. And so I do think that prioritizing self-care, whether it's sleep, it's exercise, it's social connection, it's, saying no to demands at work, you know what? I'm just not going to make a video this week. It is what it is. I'm going to take care of myself. And I think when we prioritize that, it's been my experience that you end up with time to think and process and be creative and rest. And then the time you do spend working is far more productive.
Totally agree.
And not productive in the sense of like you're checking more things off the to-do list faster, but you're doing more of the right things in less time, and you end up doing less things in less time, but achieving the same results and have a better life experience to show for it.
When I feel like it creates space for you, right, in your mind a little bit. And so when you do that, it gives you the opportunity to truly tap into the creativity that you need to be a YouTuber, to be an entrepreneur, to be a great family member. It's what you need. It's the fuel to really be successful.
What does self-care look like for you too? I can share what it looks like for me now. It's changed over time, but
for me right now, it's taking the time to sit. Because I'm always like very tasky. I have a lot of things going on. I'm juggling. So it's being very intentional for about 20 minutes and just working on a puzzle. And what it does is it takes me out of the constant wheel that's going in my mind of everything that's going on and just focusing, actually. And I end up relaxing. So that's the self-care thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little similar for me. I think I had kind of an aha moment recently, I guess maybe last months or a couple months ago, but I think that for me, rest takes form a lot more in me creating versus consuming. And so I think I definitely can recharge my batteries, like, watching a movie or playing video games or something like that. But I think a lot of times it can turn into just scrolling over social media and just consuming social media for hours and hours and hours, to the point where it's not restful for me. It's not doing anything for me. And so, I think turning it around and creating for fun has been really restful. I think you can absolutely fill that kind of creating hole with working if you have a YouTube channel, which you probably do if you're listening to this. But I think just creating for fun and not for work. For me, that takes form as just playing music, just playing guitar because I enjoy it. Like learning a new song, like some sort of, like Ingrid doing a puzzle. I think some sort of creation sort of thing, that can be super restful as well. So that's kind of how it's taken form for me.
For me, a few years ago, we started. We took a clue from the Bible, actually, and there's a central idea in the Bible called Sabbath, which is just a day of rest. And so we take a day of rest. We kick it off with on a Friday evening, actually, with a big, fun celebratory dinner. It's the only time of the week the kids get desserts and special drinks, and we typically, more than half the time, have several other families over. Sometimes it's like an open house and we've got 30, 40 people here. Sometimes we're like, this week, it's just our family. We just need to relax, and then we spend all day Saturday playing board games, going on hikes, bike rides, watching a movie, just turning off electronics and just disconnecting and spending time together. And that has been so life-giving as a rhythm for our family in so many ways. And then for me personally, woodworking is a form of self-care for me. I love getting away from the computer and just building something tangible and physical with my hands. That just feels really good. almost done. My wife, I don't know, I meant not to have them done yesterday, but new nightstands I built for us. And then it's also playing video games. So I bought a Nintendo Switch to make that a little bit more accessible for me, which is good. And yeah, those are the two primary. Oh, and then there's another one, grilling. Like just grilling something yummy once in a while. Just, I don't know. I don't really like the process of grilling it, to be honest, but I like the process of eating it. And I also like the reaction from the family of like, Dad smoked this brisket for 18 hours. It just feels good for me to see the rest of the family enjoying that as well. So, yeah. So I smoked wings last Sunday, so it's good.
You're going to have to post a picture of those nightstands when you finally finish them.
I will. Yep. And the matching headboard for our bed, and the quilt on our bed is one my wife made. So my wife does quilting as her hobby. Cool. So yeah, but prioritizing self-care in order to make room and space for the goal, and primarily for the life and not for the business. And I think when we do all this, it ends up becoming a necessity to have time to rest and relax and not do work in order to make the work productive. Otherwise, we just get bogged down in the sludge of like grind. And I am totally not a fan of the grind mentality. I think you can grind for like the times it's appropriate to do so, but even then with this mentality, it's not a grind. It's like, this is an intense season for me to then take a break if this doesn't get a time on the calendar, like you kind of indicated, Sam, so that I can eventually experience this type of life. I guess I said the word eventually. I don't really mean that, because I think you can have the type, like, set the rhythms and patterns for your life you want to experience now. They don't come because you hit a subscriber goal or a business revenue goal or a family. Like they don't come, like those things are, don't create these types of rhythms. These types of rhythms you should create, live the life the way you want to with these rhythms, and then do what you need to do to support the business side and things outside of that. Otherwise, the business will always drive your lack of time, and you'll never experience the life you want. We love wrapping up these podcast episodes with a power tip, something practical you can use typically in your channel right now to grow. We're going to tweak it this week a little bit. Something you can use in your life right now to grow as a creator. And I'm stealing this from our producer and my personal assistant, Caitlin Browning. Hi, Caitlin. She shared this as one of her personal OKRs, objectives and key results. Was it last quarter? 2 quarters ago, something like that? Yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that had that type of impact. What she did is she set aside 5 minutes of quiet per day, just 5 minutes, and just to be still and silent and not have the phone nearby, and just for 5 minutes a day. And after 2 weeks of doing that, I remember her reporting in one of our team meetings. She's like, guys, like, I feel more calm. I have more peace. I have more patience with my kids. And I'm like, all of that, plus other things you're saying, from only 5 minutes of quiet per day. I'm like, my goodness, we don't even make, not just Caitlin, all of us, like, don't even make time for 5 minutes. And I've been thinking, like, I want to do that. So that feels like a power tip from Caitlin, even though she's not here. Just if you want to create more time and margin, try just starting at 5 minutes a day of just quiet. And it feels uncomfortable at first, but now it sounds like for her, she's increased it to 15 minutes and keeps going because it's just become so life-giving for her. So, but I can totally see how it'll be awkward at first if you're not used to it. So try it. And then tweet us or tag us on Instagram or wherever you want us on Instagram or Twitter at Tim Schmoyer, or just email us at team@videocreators.com, and love to hear your story of how that works for you. All right. And thank you all for being a part of this amazing community. We appreciate each and every one of you. We look forward to seeing you again next week for another Video Creators podcast episode. We'll see you then. Bye.